What's up, guys? Welcome back. This is Dom The Commish here, and today we're going to be talking about the biggest risers and fallers of the 2024 playoffs. Now, the Super Bowl is set. Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles. Did I predict that was going to happen? Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the Commanders, that game was a crapshoot. Honestly, it doesn't matter who comes out of the NFC because the referees are just going to rig it for the Chiefs every single year. I was a big, actually, believer that the referees weren't doing scripting games, stuff like that. But this season, it just really made me turn the other way. Mainly the Raiders game, where they awarded the illegal shift instead of the false start in order to give the Chiefs the ball back. That was absolutely absurd and borderline corrupt. And then not giving Josh Allen the first down. Everyone and their mother could see that that ball was over the line. The Xavier Worthy catch. I know people are saying, oh, look at the rule book. If you look at the rule book, technically, a lot of people are saying it is a catch. The issue I have with that is if the Bills get that same catch, it's either going to be an interception for the Chiefs or it's just not going to be a catch at all. And that is the issue that I have with the refereeing and Kansas City, is because even if they're doing things 100% by the book, like if they say, oh, well, look, this is how it's supposed to go, you know that they just aren't going to give those calls to the other teams. So, Chiefs ran out of the way. Now let's go back to biggest rises and falls of the 2024 playoffs. And actually, I forgot to mention one more thing. Being a Giants fan, it really sucks this Super Bowl because I kind of have to root for the Chiefs because the Eagles are one of the worst fan bases in the NFL. I think they're second behind the Cowboys. And I have a lot of Eagles fans friends, so if they see this, they're going to be pissed at me. But yeah, let's go and start talking about the risers and fallers. So we're going to start with some honorable mentions. De'Ami Brown, Dallas Goedert, they were both in the top 5 in receiving yards. This is before the Super Bowl, so all these stats are going to be before the Super Bowl. Xavier Worthy had a good couple of games as well. Hawkinson, and a lot of people are going to say that Saquon should be a riser, but my argument for that is that can he even rise much further? He's the clear-cut running back 1 in this year, and unless he gets hurt, he's going to be the running back 1 next year, and it's not really going to be close. So I put him in this because if not, it would be way too obvious that he'd just obviously be number 1 just because of how disgusting of a playoffs and an entire season that he's had. The sneaky dishonorable mentions are Russell Wilson, Aaron Jones, and Brian Robinson Jr. So with Russ, didn't have a really good game and could definitely be open to being replaced by a younger quarterback, maybe even Fields next season if they don't want Russ. And then Aaron Jones and Brian Robinson just both did not get going in the ground game for their respective teams. They both had under 4 yards per carry, and they were probably 2 of the worst running backs in this playoffs. Obviously, there's a couple more on this list that we're going to talk about in the bottom 5 riser or bottom 5 fallers. But yeah, those are the dishonorable mentions. Now, without further ado, let's get into the list. Now, number 5 riser is going to be a bit of an interesting one. People might not agree with me on this. I'm going to say J-Mo Williams, because even though he did not have the best game, I mean, he had 64 total yards, he only had 2 touches of the ball. They want to get this guy involved. He's going to be involved in the rushing game and the receiving game, and he has the potential for absolutely huge plays, right? He had 61 yards and a touchdown, and if this is a game where he's only getting 2 touches, and if you're talking fantasy-wise, you can actually quick calculate this out. 1.4 for the receiving yards, 12.1 for the rushing yards, and the touchdown. You get 13.5 points. And if I'm getting that much just from probably his worst game of the season, objectively, only getting 2 touches, I'm a really big fan of J-Mo Williams. And as long as he stays off the drug radar and the PED radar, I think that he can be an even better fantasy asset this next year. And also, that 1-2 punch with Amon-Ra St. Brown. The offense doesn't need much more. We're going to be talking about another Lion later in this video, but if you got Amon-Ra for the slick route running, and then J-Mo Williams will take the top off for you. Like, I just, with how they're getting J-Mo involved, I really like him for next year. Our number 5 faller is Jalen McMillan. He's here at number 5 because I'm not too worried about him. He had 2 receptions for 41 yards and 0 touchdowns. He wasn't against the number 1 corner in the Washington defense, and we know that besides Marshawn Lattimore, this Washington secondary is absolutely terrible. So if you feel Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore were supposed to be, duking it out, going crazy, as they always did back when Marshawn Lattimore was in the Saints. And Jalen McMillan was supposed to be that guy who comes in and is just going to take all the receiving work while Marshawn Lattimore is mostly locked down. Didn't really happen here. Jalen McMillan had kind of a mid-game, not even a mid to bad game, 2 receptions, 41 yards. But overall, he does fall in my rankings, and he does fall as in terms of a player, especially if Chris Godwin stays. He might not stay, but he's just not someone I'm as excited about, because if he doesn't get the touchdowns, then his production is really bad. But overall, once again, not too concerned about him, but he has to make a mention on this list. We're going to talk about the number 4 riser, Khalil Shakir. Shakir has really outed himself as the number 1 undisputed target in this Josh Allen's offense. He barely drops anything. He had 18 receptions, which was first in the playoffs, 174 receiving yards, which was 6th. And he's just the outlet. All the other Bills players, you got Samuel, you've got Cooper, Coleman, Kincaid, Dawson Knox, they're all getting approximately anywhere from 1 target on a bad game to 6 targets in a good game, while Khalil Shakir is consistently getting those 6, 7, 8 target games. And Shakir's only 24. He's only going to be getting better from here, hopefully. And I feel like Khalil Shakir is a great asset if you have him in your fantasy team, as well as just a great asset for the Buffalo Bills, because he's that guy who doesn't really care about getting all the big numbers. I mean, obviously he'd like to have the big numbers, but he's not that Stephon Diggs diva. If I'm not getting 12 targets a game, I'm going to come over and I'm going to kick your ass. And that's what really killed the Bills in the regular season these past couple of years. And what really made Josh Allen's turnovers a big problem is that he's trying to force the ball to Diggs. But now that he's gone, Shakir's a great wide receiver 1, and I'm very happy with his production in the playoffs. Number 4 faller is Sam Darnold. Now, a lot of people would put him lower, but I have a couple guys who performed a lot worse in the playoffs than him. 264 total yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. This Vikings team was just like the one that the Giants beat 2 years ago when they made the playoffs. They were just kind of a team who had a cupcake schedule and got a couple of lucky wins and made the playoffs with a really good record. But when they needed to show why they made the playoffs at 14-3, Sam Darnold completely pooped the bed. And he just, especially in that Lions game too, in the Lions game, to make them play this game against the LA Rams, who, by the way, aren't as great of a team. They got some good players, but they are nowhere near the level of talent that this Vikings team had and the record that this Vikings team had. And Sam Darnold may have just lost himself millions and millions of dollars just because of how badly he played. If you're a rebuilding franchise, you see, I think he's 27 or 28 at this point, a 28-year-old quarterback who had a pretty good season. You look at him, he's like, oh, okay. And then at the end of the year, he just completely fell off the face of the earth. That's not a guy that I want on my franchise. He's a guy that maybe I could use as a bridge for a newer quarterback. Like if I'm Las Vegas and I can't get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders and I draft a guy like Milroe or Jackson Dart, and I've been like, you know what, Sam, you should come here for a year and you could sit in front of, You can play in front of Dart, help him develop. That's just what he's going to be. He's going to be a guy who goes to a team and just helps another QB develop. He's not going to have the career resurgence like Baker Mayfield did, which I always thought that Baker Mayfield was heavily overhated, because especially at the Panthers and the most at the Browns. Now we're going to talk about our number 3 riser, Sam Laporta. Now, Sam Laporta had 6 receptions, 51 receiving yards, and that one-handed touchdown in the game against the Commanders. Sam Laporta, the second half of the season, has been nothing short of consistent. He hasn't scored under 10 fantasy points, and he's getting consistent targets. At the beginning of the year, you were worried because he was getting 3, 2, 1 targets a game. He had 7 targets this game. He's had double digits in a couple of games, and he's still very young. So, is Sam Laporta going to be as good as Trey McBride or Brock Bowers? Absolutely not. But is he going to be a consistent guy who makes these big plays and is going to be in an elite offense in the future? Yes, he's going to be. And he proved why he was one of the best rookies last year in this game, because he's got the really good hands, and as a tight end, he really did make a huge impact in this game. Now we're going to move on to our number 3 faller, who is Najee Harris. 17 rushing yards, 41 receiving yards. Overall, not too bad in terms of yardage total. But when you're in a must-win game, when you're only getting 17 yards, averaging under 3 yards a carry, it's just not a good look for the Steelers. I mean, Jaylen Warren did even worse. So if I'm the Steelers in the draft and I see this really loaded running back class where in the 3rd or 4th round I can get a guy like Travion Henderson and probably have him play ahead of Najee Harris, I'm not completely sold on Najee Harris being a starting running back next year. I'm really not, because even in the running back by committee where he has to start to solidify himself and move forward and get above Jaylen Warren, he hasn't done that, despite Jaylen Warren just not playing up to par. Both of them have been really bad this year. And I feel like the Steelers will definitely be in the market for a running back. I think Najee Harris's contract is up this year. I'd have to double check that. But when his contract's up, I don't see a re-signing happening with the Steelers. I mean, maybe he can revive his career somewhere else, but I don't see a future with him and the Steelers past next year. The number 2 riser is Jaden Daniels. Now, I mentioned in my last video that I think he could have a sophomore slump next year. I feel like it's less likely, but if you look at these passing quarterback stats, you've got 822 yards passing, 129 yards rushing. He's got 200 scrimmage yards more than any other QB does in this playoffs. He's averaging 319 yards per game. He had a 6-to-1 touchdown to turnover ratio. There's nothing that you can look at and say that Jaden Daniels wasn't the best quarterback in this postseason this year. And it's literally not even close. And Jaden Daniels really showed how bad the rest of that Commanders team is. Like, he didn't commit, I think he committed 1 turnover in that Eagles game. I don't think he had any in the Rams game and the Buccaneers game. Or no, it wasn't the Rams game, sorry. The Lions game or the Buccaneers game. I don't think he had a turnover in those. I think he had 1 against the Eagles, which is fine. I mean, oh yeah, because it was the Quinyon Mitchell pick. But that was also kind of like garbage time. That was when Jaden Daniels was slinging the ball and just trying to get yards, trying to get touchdowns. That team really let him down. 3 fumbles to just give the Eagles 3 different possessions. If that doesn't happen, this is a close-ass game. It really is. The Commanders need to start solidifying, building more around Jaden Daniels. If I had to do it, I'd take to free agency more than the draft. I feel like you can get like an interior offensive lineman late in the later rounds. You could get Egbuka or another number 2 receiver for Terry McLaurin to throw to. Other than Terry McLaurin for Jaden Daniels to throw to. And this Commanders team could be scary, especially if Jaden Daniels keeps up this production. But overall, he is very close to the number one riser. It was really close, but I decided to go with someone else, and I'm pretty sure you might know who it is. The number 2 faller is Isaiah Pacheco. Now, Pacheco, in 3 games for the Chiefs, has 42 total yards. He's averaging 14 yards per game. Kareem Hunt has been shown to be playing significantly better, and Kareem Hunt is not that good. Like, Kareem Hunt had a great season. He should not be playing better than Pacheco is. He should not be the 3rd leading rusher on his own team in the playoffs. Pacheco's job is definitely in jeopardy. I do not think by Kareem Hunt. Like I said, this running back class definitely has a lot of depth. You could have the Chiefs in the later rounds draft someone like Kyle Monaghy, another Rutgers guy, Travion Henderson, Ollie Gordon, and if those guys play good, they're going to overtake Pacheco because he's been hurt a little bit in the last 2 years, and he really is not doing well in the playoffs. He needs to have a big Super Bowl, or else his job could be in jeopardy. Now, before we get to our number 1 riser, we're going to talk about our number 1 faller. So we're going to go 2 fallers in a row, and we're going to go and talk about Justin Herbert. Man, did I love what Justin Herbert did this year. He started off kind of slow, but then he didn't throw a pick for like the last, I don't know how many games. He didn't have like any turnovers, and then the playoffs come around, boom, he does the Charger thing. 4 turnovers and 1 touchdown. It's just, the biggest part of Justin Herbert's game was that he didn't turn over the ball, and he was consistent. He would give you about 200 yards and 2 touchdowns per game. Occasionally, he'd go off. But with 4 turnovers, his job could definitely be in jeopardy. I doubt it, because I think Jim Harbaugh does trust him. But if I'm looking in the future, especially fantasy-wise, if the Chargers are going to draft a running back this year. I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to do that. I mean, J.K. Dobbins had a good year, but with someone who has such an extensive injury history, as well as Gus Edwards, who had a really long injury this year as well, I can definitely see them picking up a running back in the later rounds and just running the ball down teams' throats like they did all this year, except even more, especially in these close games when Justin Herbert is proven he can't be reliable in the games that really, really matter. This one, and then the Jags 2 years ago. We're talking a lot about 2 years ago. It's very similar. But the number 1 riser also happens to play for the same team as Justin Herbert. A lot of you know who this probably is already. Ladd McConkey. Now, this guy had an unbelievable game against the Buccaneers. Or not the Buccaneers. Sorry. Against the Texans. Against Derek Stingley, he had 197 receiving yards, which was 4th in the playoffs despite only playing 1 game, and 9 receptions. And he had that bomb 86-yard touchdown. You take away that touchdown, pretty much, and you have 8 receptions for 107 yards, which is still a very, very good stat line. Ladd McConkey has solidified himself as the number 1 target for Justin Herbert. Quentin Johnston is absolute dog shit. Josh Palmer is inconsistent. The running backs are pure rushing types. They have no tight ends. This skill position group is very weak. And next season, they're pretty much going to have to address maybe 1 or 2 of them. They can't get a wide receiver 2, an elite running back 1, and an elite tight end 1. Ladd McConkey is a guy that I am drafting so much of this next year because, throughout the second half of the season, he's just been getting 8, 9, 10 targets a game at least. And has been doing a lot with them. And not only is he been an unbelievable route runner this year, he also took the top off that Texans defense with that big touchdown. Ladd McConkey has the chance to become the next Cooper Kupp. He really does. People will clown me on saying that, but just a guy who can do everything for your team. And this game really showed it, and which is why he is my number one riser of the playoffs, despite only playing one game. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed some of my takes. Let me know who you think should be the number one riser in the comments. And if you say Saquon Barkley, I'm just going to tell you that he can't rise anymore. So, don't say Saquon Barkley. All right. You guys have a lovely night, and subscribe.